At the family reunion I paid for, they gave everyone a custom t-shirt. Mine said, "Biggest disappointment." I didn't argue. I just smiled, took out a stack of papers, tore them in half, and left. An hour later, they finally read what I destroyed and started calling nonstop. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming, that it hit me like a slap in the face. But honestly, it felt more like the final piece of a puzzle I'd been trying to convince myself didn't exist. I stood there, holding the t-shirt, staring at the bold black letters like they were written in permanent jacker on my chest. Biggest disappointment. Nice. My sister Haley was already giggling, leaning into her new boyfriend, Jack, who she'd brought along to impress. He managed a tight, uncomfortable smile, his eyes darting from the shirt to my face with a look of genuine pity. It was the first time all night anyone had looked at me without a hint of condescension. "It's just a joke, Ariana." John gave me a lazy shrug from across the table, beer in one hand. "Come on, you've got to admit, it's kind of funny." My parents, silent at first. Then my mom let out this light chuckle, like someone had told a slightly inappropriate joke at a PTA meeting. My dad shook his head, smiling like I just tripped on a sidewalk. I nodded once, then again, slower. "Right, funny." I folded the shirt neatly and set it on the edge of my plate. No one noticed that my hands were shaking just slightly, or if they did, they didn't care. I don't know what I expected. I paid for this entire reunion, venue, food, travel. I even paid for the matching shirts. That's the punchline, isn't it? They used my card to print that label. The joke. Hilarious. I'd spent months organizing this weekend, reserved the old lakeside house they used to rave about, hoping, foolishly, that maybe nostalgia would soften things. Maybe I'd finally feel like part of something again. Instead, I got a printed confirmation of my place in the family hierarchy, right at the bottom. And the worst part? I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. Tired in the kind of way that sinks into your bones and settles there like cement. I pushed back my chair, smiled. "Be right back." I walked upstairs to the guest room, my room, technically, since I'd rented the entire property, and opened my bag. The folder was exactly where I left it. Thick, crisp, weighted. I'd had the papers printed on special parchment, something that felt significant to hold, something they could keep. I'd even considered bringing champagne to go with the announcement. Instead, I walked back into the dining room and stopped just behind my empty chair. No one looked up. They were too busy posing for a group selfie in their new shirts. Haley had an arm around Jack, who was holding his shirt up awkwardly, not quite wearing it. Perfect timing. I took out the folder, slid the papers from inside, and without saying a single word, I began tearing them in half. Slowly, deliberately, page by page. The sound, a sharp, fibrous rip, cut through their laughter. Haley turned first. "Wait, what is that?" John furrowed his brow. "Dude, is that a contract?" I didn't answer. My dad stood halfway. "Ariana." The use of my full name was a warning. I set the torn papers down in front of my empty plate, smiled again, tighter this time. "Enjoy the shirts." Then I walked out. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just footsteps against the old wood floor, the creak of the screen door behind me, and the cool night air pressing against my skin like relief. I didn't even take my jacket. I didn't need it. I was halfway to the car when the first call came in, then a second, then 3 more, like a dam cracking open. I didn't answer. Not yet. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before even turning the key, just staring at my hands on the wheel, still calm, still too calm, like my body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. They laughed. That part kept looping in my head. My mom, my siblings, even my dad. Like it was all so harmless. Like calling their daughter, their sister. Their biggest disappointment was just another cute little family quirk. Right up there with Haley's passive-aggressive holiday cards and John's jokes about me being single and too career-focused to ever find a man. But it wasn't harmless. And it wasn't new. I could trace it back to age 9. That was the year John broke the neighbor's window with a baseball, and I got grounded for not stopping him. Haley lied about failing a test, and I got a lecture about being a bad influence. Every mistake in that house somehow had my name attached to it. At 12, I remember getting a C in math, My first. I cried. Not because of the grade, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Dinner table sarcasm, mom's dramatic sigh, dad's quiet disappointment. Maybe stick to the arts, sweetie, mom had said. Meanwhile, John could fail an entire semester and still get extra spending money for trying his best. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small student loan. Not even money, just a signature. They said no, said I needed to learn responsibility. John had wrecked 2 cars by then. Haley had already moved to Europe for a photography course they helped fund. But I, the one who wanted to study computer science, needed to learn responsibility. So I worked nights, slept 4 hours a day, built something from nothing, a tech service at first, then a subscription platform. Learned how to code, how to pitch, how to get rejected and keep going. I didn't ask for much. A little credit would have been nice. Maybe a, "we're proud of you." Instead, I became the running gag, the weird one, the girl who always showed up late to Thanksgiving because she was probably playing on her computer in a basement somewhere. When I got my first 6-figure investment, I told no one. When I cleared my student debt in one lump sum, I told no one. When my company went viral, still no one. It felt like if I told them, they'd just find a way to twist it, turn it into another joke, or worse, take credit for it. So I kept quiet. But I watched Haley host parties in apartments I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. Watched John post cryptic Instagram captions about mental health, only to DM me for money 2 days later. Watched my parents struggle with their mortgage but still buy anniversary cruises. And I started helping. Quietly. An anonymous donation here, an untraceable transfer there. Because despite everything, I still wanted to believe in family. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. That fantasy shattered last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone out to a ski lodge I rented. My mom told me to save my money, then posted a status about how Haley surprised them with a family-funded holiday. That was when I decided. No more behind the scenes. The reunion I just left. That was supposed to be my reveal. A real one. I had it all lined up. A notarized letter gifting my parents' early retirement. Their mortgage wiped clean. For Haley, I had established a managed trust fund for her kids. A significant sum, untouchable by her, designated solely for their education and future, ensuring they had the stability she never provided. It was a gift to them, not her. For John, a debt relief fund that would clear his burdens, but with a condition. It came with a fully paid placement in a top-tier rehab and career counseling program. He'd get a monthly stipend, but only upon completion. It was a hand up, not a handout. Each document was signed, sealed, printed on heavy linen paper. I even picked navy blue folders to match the table decor. That's how far I went. I wanted it to be beautiful, memorable. I imagined the look on my mother's face when she read the letter. The tears, the pride. The slow realization that the daughter she once called directionless had built something big enough to give them all a second chance. I imagined my father standing up, speechless, shaking my hand. I imagined Haley saying, "I was wrong about you." John saying, "Damn, Ariana, I had no idea." I imagined so many things. What I got was a joke printed on a t-shirt. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it was just bad humor. But here's the thing. They knew. On some level, they always knew. They saw the car I drove. The clothes I wore. The way people reacted when I mentioned my company name. They just didn't care. Or worse, they did care. And they hated what it said about them. So they laughed. Because it was easier to keep me in the disappointment box than to admit they might have been wrong about me all along. And now, they were going to find out what I had in those papers. Not just them, everyone. And they were going to see the truth. But not before things got worse. The hum of the tires on the asphalt was the only sound in the car, a stark contrast to the storm brewing on my phone. I didn't even make it back to the city limits before the story started spreading, a digital wildfire built on a pyre of half-truths and manufactured drama. The first ember landed via a call from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months, her voice a cocktail of concern and morbid curiosity. "Hey, your sister just posted something weird on Facebook. Said you had a breakdown at the family reunion? Everything okay?" Breakdown. That was the word she used. The carefully chosen, clinically damning term, that paints a picture of irrationality and instability. It was the perfect weapon for them, an instant disqualifier for my side of any story. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled over into a gravelly lookout point, the city skyline, a distant, hazy promise. I opened Facebook, and there it was. A photo of the dining table from earlier, my mother's meticulously ironed family unity t-shirts laid out on the chairs, a forced, tight-lipped smile on my brother-in-law Jack's face. The caption, penned by my sister Haley, was a masterclass in passive-aggressive martyrdom. Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you, Ariana. Even when you self-sabotage. No other names were mentioned, but none were needed. The comment section was already a flood of vague, syrupy sympathy from their circle of friends and distant relatives who only ever saw the curated highlight reel of our lives. So sorry you have to go through that, girl. You deserve peace. You did your best. Some people are just toxic. Family is so complicated. Sending hugs your way. Each comment was a small, sharp stone thrown from the safety of ignorance, and I was their designated target. That would have been bad enough. Then came the group chat pings, a rapid-fire assault. My aunt, my mother's chief lieutenant in gossip, sent a message oozing with feigned worry. Ariana, honey, are you okay? Your mother called me, absolutely hysterical. She said you threw a tantrum and destroyed legal documents in some kind of manic episode. Destroyed documents. The lie was getting bigger, more audacious. Then came the direct hit from my brother, John. His text was raw and vicious. You seriously need help. You embarrassed everyone, especially in front of Haley's new guy. We tried to include you and you made it weird. Real classy. Include me? The scene from hours before flashed in my mind. It wasn't a breakdown, it was a boundary. After years of quiet demands escalating into entitled expectations, I had finally presented them with the legal documents they now claimed I'd destroyed. They were, in fact, severance packages. Beautifully printed, legally binding agreements that outlined the final payments from me to them, officially terminating the decade-long, one-sided financial relationship I had foolishly enabled. Their joke about needing me to co-sign on a new vacation home was the last straw. My refusal was met not with understanding, but with outrage. Their tantrum was what followed, shouted accusations, claims of betrayal. My quiet departure was, in their revised history, a manic episode. I didn't reply to any of them. I simply took a deep, steadying breath, the cool air of the lookout point clearing my head. I forwarded the original, undestroyed documents to my attorney. The subject line was simple: timestamp and hold. I keyed my executive assistant, Sarah. She, who had seen their endless emails and wheedling phone calls firsthand, replied in under 5 minutes. The contingency plan is ready. Would you like me to move up the Forbes feature to this weekend? I can add the scanned pages back in. Yes, that. Because here's the thing they always forgot. I had options. I had evidence. I had receipts. They had a story, a weak and flimsy narrative woven from their own desperate entitlement. But the louder they told it, the more people who heard it, the more dangerous it became. If there's one thing my family knows how to do, it's rewrite history. This time, I wasn't going to hand them the pen. I started by sharing the Forbes link quietly on my own social media. No tag, no commentary, just the link. The headline did the heavy lifting. The underdog founder who secretly funded her family's life for a decade, and then cut ties. Inside were high-resolution photos of the documents. Scanned, signed, dated, the trust fund agreement I'd established for Haley's children. The rehab and debt relief contract John had signed, and then conveniently forgotten. The paperwork for the complete mortgage payoff on my parents' house. The article mentioned my company's valuation, a figure north of $30 million, and the anonymous donations to local charities that had been traced back to my personal accounts. It highlighted the tech mentorship grant I had launched for women written off by their own families, and it mentioned, briefly but with devastating clarity, why I walked away. Not with bitterness. With clarity. Within hours, my digital world exploded. First came the messages of congratulations from colleagues and acquaintances. Then, the sheepish apologies from friends who had seen Haley's post and offered her sympathy. Then, the panic. A frantic, tearful voicemail from Haley. Ariana, call me right now. Why would you make that public? You're humiliating us. A text from John, dripping with impotent rage. Wow, real mature. Hope you feel good about ruining the family name. And finally, my mother, her voice a wheedling whisper in my voicemail. We need to talk. This has all been a misunderstanding. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun. Misunderstood. A joke. The gaslighting was so reflexive, they probably didn't even realize they were doing it. The story gained a momentum I couldn't have predicted. A popular YouTube commentary channel picked it up, dissecting the family dynamic with surgical precision. A true crime podcast did a special episode on financial abuse and familial gaslighting. Comments flooded in across platforms. People chose sides, but overwhelmingly, they chose mine. Because people recognize humiliation when they see it, and they recognize that I had been the target, not the perpetrator. John, ever the gladiator for his own bad decisions, tried to clap back online with a long thread about my history of being dramatic. Within minutes, a user responded with a screenshot of the annotated contract for his debt relief, with his own signature clearly visible at the bottom. Someone else unearthed an old tweet where Haley had bragged about being the golden child who could get anything she wanted. A tech influencer I'd never even met shared the Forbes article with the caption, "Let this be a reminder. Not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in sweaters." You'd think after the article, after the public unraveling of their narrative, they'd retreat. They didn't. Desperation made them reckless. Haley told extended family the money had gone to my head. John claimed I was mentally unstable, but the narrative wasn't sticking anymore. The facts were too stark, too public. Then came the final, most audacious act of self-immolation. John started a GoFundMe page. The title was a masterwork of delusion, "Help Our Family Survive a Malicious Smear Campaign." The description was a symphony of manufactured victimhood, speaking of being targeted by a wealthy, unstable relative, and needing funds to recover from this trauma and find peace. They used an old family photo, one from a Christmas 10 years ago, where we were all smiling. It backfired spectacularly. The page was flooded not with donations, but with comments. People posted the Forbes link over and over. They posted screenshots of John's old, deleted social media posts begging me for money. One user wrote, "The only thing you need to recover from is your own entitlement." Another added, "Does Peace have the same interest rate as the loan your sister already paid off for you?" The page was reported for fraud by hundreds of people and was taken down in less than 24 hours. After that, there was only silence. The pings stopped. The calls ceased. The digital storm passed, leaving behind a strange, clean quiet. Sitting in my car, looking out at the city lights finally twinkling to life, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt done. The war was over, a war I had never wanted to fight. They hadn't just lost an argument. They had lost their leverage, their narrative, and their power over me. And in that quiet, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. That was the moment I stopped watching. The GoFundMe page, in all its spectacular, backfiring glory, was the final scene in a drama I no longer had a role in. They had tried to rebuild their version of the story, but this time, the foundation was rotten, and the whole world could see the cracks. I closed the laptop, muted the group chats, and unfollowed the last few stragglers from their orbit. The obsessive need to monitor their narrative, to anticipate the next attack, simply evaporated. I was no longer the desperate kid trying to earn a seat at their table, contorting myself into a shape they might find acceptable. I had my own table now, built with my own hands, and the guest list was mine to curate, and the silence that followed that realization, it was vast and profound. The first time I had felt true peace in years. I started living my life, not out of revenge or to post a triumphant highlight reel for them to witness. I lived it just for me, finally and freely. I took that trip to Southeast Asia I'd always postponed, and I ate street food without worrying about my phone buzzing with a new crisis. I made bold, risky decisions at my company without a chorus of familial doubt echoing in my head, without wondering if this, finally, would be the achievement that made them proud. The validation I had chased for so long had been a mirage, and once I stopped running toward it, I realized how thirsty I was for my own life. One night, scrolling idly through my DMs, I saw a message from a name I didn't recognize. It was just one line. "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." That one message hit me harder than any of the public praise. Not because I needed a pat on the back, but because it reframed the entire ordeal. It reminded me that walking away wasn't a selfish act of abandonment. It was a necessary act of preservation. It was survival, not spite. I was never angry that they didn't love me the way I wanted. My anger, I came to understand, was rooted in something more insidious. I was angry that they pretended they did while methodically cutting me down every time I stood up a little straighter. Their love was a leash, and I was only a good daughter, a good sister, when I kept it slack. I don't know where they are now. I don't check. Sometimes well-meaning friends send me whispered updates, a new job for John, a move for Haley, but I delete the messages unread. The version of me who needed to know, who craved their approval or even their downfall, doesn't live here anymore. Update, 2 years later. It's been a while. I was invited to a wedding recently. A friend, one of the few who saw the worst of the fallout and stuck around, a quiet anchor in the storm. At the reception, held in a warm, light-filled barn, she introduced me to her cousin. The woman smiled, shook my hand, and then her eyes widened in recognition. "Wait a minute," she said, a grin spreading across her face. "Are you the Tshirt Girl?" I laughed. A real, deep, unburdened laugh that came from my stomach. "Yeah," I said, shaking my head. "I guess I am." She told me she had cut off her own parents last year after a lifetime of emotional turmoil. She said my story, which she'd stumbled upon during a late-night doom scroll, gave her the final, defiant push she needed. I didn't quite know what to say. I still don't, really. I think I mumbled something about being glad she found her peace. But it stuck with me, that moniker, the Tshirt Girl. For so long, I thought leaving my family meant losing, surrendering the fight. But in that moment, I realized it was the first time I had ever truly stood up for myself. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I wonder if they still talk about me, if they miss me. Then the more honest question surfaces: do they miss me, or do they miss who they could control? Do they miss the person, or the pocketbook and the scapegoat? I don't reach out, and they haven't either. Not in a long, long time. Maybe that silence says everything that needs to be said. Do you think I went too far? Or not far enough? This story teaches us a profound and often painful lesson. Family is not an unconditional contract for your suffering. We are raised on the ideal that blood is the ultimate bond, a sacred tie that must be preserved at all costs. But love is not an obligation, and a family title does not grant anyone a license to diminish, disrespect, or emotionally dismantle another person. The true essence of family should be a safe harbor, a place of mutual respect and encouragement. When it becomes the source of the storm, the very place where your worth is questioned and your spirit is broken, you are not a traitor for seeking shelter elsewhere. Walking away, as Ariana did, is not an act of vengeance, but a radical act of self-preservation and self-respect. It is the declaration that you will no longer set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Her story illustrates that true strength isn't found in endlessly enduring toxicity, but in having the courage to sever ties that bind you to a narrative of failure. It's about choosing your own peace over their dysfunctional comfort. Ultimately, the most powerful thing you can do is to build your own life, define your own worth, and create a new family, one of choice, not of chance, where you are celebrated, not tolerated. If this story resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you'd hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're on a mission to reach our first big milestone of 1,000 subscribers this month, and every single one of you helps us get closer to that goal. By subscribing, you won't miss out on the next story. Thank you so much for your support. It truly means the world.